I used to work night shifts at a small, underfunded hospital on the outskirts of town. It wasn't a bad place, just old. The walls smelled like iodine and forgotten years, and the lights in the east wing always flickered, no matter how many times they were replaced. But we got used to it. We always got used to it. Until that one night when something shifted and I realized not everything in that hospital was alive. Started just after 3 a.m. I was doing rounds, checking patients when I passed by room 109. It was supposed to be empty, renovations, I thought, but the door was slightly open, and inside, I saw light bleeding under the curtain. I paused. Something in my gut told me to ignore it, but I didn't. I pushed the door slowly and peeked in. There was someone lying in the bed. Their face was turned to the wall, their arm motionless under the blanket. I looked down at the clipboard hanging on the foot of the bed. No name, no admission, just a blank form. When I looked back up, the bed was empty. That should have been enough to send me home, but I told myself I was tired, that my mind was playing tricks. I closed the door and continued, but every step I took echoed louder than it should have. Like someone was walking just behind me. I turned twice. No one. When I reached the supply closet at the end of the hall, the lights above me buzzed violently, then went out completely. The silence that followed was unnatural, too heavy, like the hospital itself was holding its breath. And then I heard it. From down the corridor, the slow, dragging squeak of wheels, like an old gurney being pushed across the tiles. But there was no one scheduled to move a patient that night. My mouth went dry. I stood frozen, and the sound stopped just before reaching me. I turned on my flashlight and pointed it down the hallway. Nothing, just a flickering exit sign. But on the floor were wet footprints, bare, small, leading straight into room 109. I didn't follow them. Instead, I went to the break room, locked the door, and sat in the corner like a child. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. At sunrise, I handed in my badge and never returned. But that wasn't the end. The nightmares started a week later. Always the same, the hospital hallway, that room, the breathing behind the curtain. Until one night, I dreamed I was back in room 109. But this time I was in the bed, and someone else was standing at the foot, watching me. I woke up in a cold sweat. But worse, there was a dent in the end of my mattress, as if someone had been sitting there. The mattress sank as if someone had just sat on the edge of the bed. But no one was there. I could feel the weight, heavy and deliberate. Then came the sound. Faint breathing, uneven, raspy, like it was coming from lungs that shouldn't still work. I tried to move, but my limbs were frozen. It was like I was stuck between sleep and waking. And then, I felt something cold brush against my foot. It wasn't the blanket. It was a hand. I squeezed my eyes shut, tried to scream, but no sound came out. Finally, I jerked myself awake and flipped on the light. The room was empty, except for one detail that made my blood run cold. The chair in the corner, the one that had been facing the wall, was now turned directly toward my bed. And sitting on the seat was an old hospital ID badge, with my name on it, and the wrong date of birth. I was admitted after a minor car crash. Nothing serious, just a concussion and some bruises. The EMTs insisted I get checked, so I ended up at St. Agnes Memorial, a hospital I'd never heard of before. It looked old, the kind of place where everything smelled like bleach and the walls seemed to remember pain. I didn't think much of it. Not at first. The nurse pushing my wheelchair was silent the entire time. She didn't smile, didn't explain anything, just rolled me through the west wing, where the lights were dimmer and the air felt heavier. We stopped at room 616. I remember the door. Gray, chipped paint, and a metal plate that looked recently polished. Too clean, like someone had just reattached it. "I'll come check on you in the morning," she said flatly. I asked if I could get a different room. She didn't even answer, just turned and walked away. Inside, the room was cold. Not the usual hospital chill, this was deeper. The kind that crawls under your skin. The walls had long scratches near the floorboards. The window was bolted shut. And in the corner, facing the bed, was an empty chair. That chair was the worst part. The rest of the night blurred into silence. No TV. No Wi-Fi. No nurse call button that worked. The hallway outside was too quiet, like I was the only patient on the floor. I kept glancing at the chair. Felt like it was staring at me. I drifted off sometime after midnight, but I woke up hours later. Not from a dream, but from weight. Like someone had sat on the bed. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. I looked. No one there. But the mattress still dipped on one side, and I swear I heard breathing. When morning came, I rushed out, barefoot and confused. I found a nurse in the East Wing and demanded answers. She looked puzzled. "We haven't used room 616 since the fire." "What fire?" I asked. She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "That room's been sealed off for years." I went back. There was no door, just a solid wall where I'd spent the night. I backed away from the wall. My throat was dry. I kept blinking, thinking maybe I was just disoriented, that I'd taken the wrong turn, but the plaque was gone. No 616. No scratched floor. Just a blank stretch of hallway like the room had never existed. I kept asking staff about it. One orderly ignored me. One nurse said she wasn't allowed to discuss that side of the wing. Another, older, gave me a look of pity and said, "You really slept there?" My God! I demanded to speak to someone in charge. They said the head nurse was off duty. The attending physician couldn't be reached. My chart had been transferred to another floor I couldn't access. Everything felt off, disconnected, like I'd been erased and reinserted into the wrong part of the system. It was supposed to be a quick shift. One night, fill in for a friend who'd come down with the flu. I was a traveling nurse, so bouncing between hospitals wasn't new. But St. Elias had a reputation. Not officially, of course, but among staff, whispers. The kind that didn't make it into paperwork. People said the building had energy. That patients in the west basement wing never slept through the night. That call lights flickered for empty beds. I didn't believe any of it. I was assigned to room 3B, long-term care, mostly comatose patients. Easy. I took vitals, filled charts, checked IVs. My last patient, Mr. Halberd, had been unconscious for months. No family, no visitors. Just machines keeping him alive. At midnight, I heard tapping. 3 quick knocks. Then silence. I stood outside room 3B, holding my breath. Nothing. I walked in, he hadn't moved. Eyes closed. Machines steady. But the call light was on. I turned it off, brushed it off. Half an hour later, it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, when I entered, the room was cold. Not AC cold, deep cold. Like walking into a freezer. I checked the thermostat. Normal. Mr. Halberd's hands were warm. Still unconscious. Still breathing. But the window, a narrow slit above the bed, was fogged. From the inside. Then I noticed something new. The mirror on the wall, used for physical therapy, was smeared. A handprint. Long fingers. Too long. And no one else had been in the room. I wiped it off. Kept working. Just before dawn, I walked past 3B again. The door was cracked open. Inside, I saw movement. For the first time in months, Mr. Halberd was sitting up. I ran in, heart pounding, but the bed was empty. No sheets disturbed. Machines silent. The chair in the corner rocked slightly, like someone had just gotten up. I checked the hallway. No one. Then I heard the heart monitor beep. Once. Long, slow. But it wasn't coming from 3B. It was coming from room 2A, the room directly below. I rushed down the stairs. Room 2A was supposed to be storage. Empty beds, old equipment. But the door was open. Inside, lit only by the glow of a monitor, was Mr. Halberd. Sitting upright. Eyes open. No IVs. No machines. Just staring at the wall. I backed out. Called security. When we returned, the room was empty. No patient. No monitor. No chair. Just a single, fresh handprint on the inside of the window. I told the security guard everything. He didn't even pretend to take notes. Just kept glancing toward the hallway like he didn't want to be involved. That room doesn't exist anymore, he muttered. They sealed it 5 years ago, after the incident. When I asked what incident, he just walked away. Back in the nurse's station, I pulled up the hospital's internal files. The system was slow, like something was resisting me. But eventually I found the log for room 2A. It had one entry: Patient Halberd, deceased, March 12, 2018. Cardiac arrest during physical therapy. Died instantly. No family. No autopsy. I stared at the screen. That was 5 years ago to the day. I went back to 3B. The room was still cold. And the mirror? It was smeared again. Only this time it wasn't a handprint. It was a word. Help. Written backward, like someone wrote it from inside the glass. I didn't go back after that. But a week later, I got a voicemail from the night supervisor. Short. Rushed. Just 6 words before the line went dead. We saw him. Room 2A. Again.